What's your name?
Josiah. My name's Will.
My name is Stella. My name's Chloe.
George. Ben. Claire. Thatcher.
And what's your mom's name?
Julie. Emily Klaus. My mom's name is Leslie. Like, it's
Emily. Gracie.
Lisa.
How old are you?
5.
7. 9.
5. And I just lost a second tooth.
How old is your mom?
My mom was 34.
28. 30 something.
I don't know. 30 something?
What do you do for fun?
Play with my dolls.
I play outside.
Play Lego.
I play on the monkey bars. I slap myself in the face. I
wiggle
with
my
Stella. I play with Stella and we do weird dances and stuff like that.
I play around with my toys. Mostly play video games and play with Lego and spend time with my family. Jump on my trampoline.
What does your mom do for fun?
Cooks. Cuddle me. Play her favorite cooking game. She likes getting into bed with Dad, and she cuddles him, and they. Oh, never mind.
What's your favorite food?
Chips. My favorite food is probably fish and chips.
Hamburgers? Don't have one. Spaghetti.
Tacos and all the other foods.
Do you know what your mom's favorite food is?
Yeah.
What is it?
Macaroni with ketchup. Mostly everything. It's like salad. Don't ruin it. I think it's chef's plate.
What food does your mom cook really well?
Tacos. Chicken. Chef's plate.
Salad.
What's your favorite TV show?
Batman. It's the walking dinosaurs. Dinosaurs. Lego Ninjago.
What is your mom's favorite TV show?
Big Brother is Friends. Chicago PD. It might be CNN or something like that.
MASH. I don't know.
What is your favorite thing about your mom?
She cooks. That she gives me hugs. That she loves me. I love her. That she makes me smile.
If you could change one thing about your mom, what would you change?
I can't change anything about her. Nothing. I love her just the way she is. Love her more than she loves me. She washes dishes.
If your mom could change one thing about you, do you know what she'd change?
She might love me as much as I love her. I'm doing my bed.
I think the craziness. Nah, she likes that about me. No, she doesn't. Yes, she does. Sometimes you drive her crazy. Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I pull her head off.
Well, it is Mother's Day, and we really just want to speak to women. We want to encourage the women in the church, and so better than I can do that is Esther Lizakowski. So I'm going to invite Esther to come up. She's going to share this morning. And for those who don't know Esther, I would say this about her. Her and her husband Max are just such an integral part of Celebration Church. They're involved in almost in every area. Max is on our leadership team. Esther, you'll recognize her from worship team. She's part of our preaching team. She leads our Tuesday morning community group, which has really grown beyond a community group. It's called Oasis. It's for women. So that happens on Tuesdays. Beyond all that, she is the mother of George, who knows her as Mom, not as Esther, but she does have another name. George is the little one who has just lost his second tooth. This is the Esther that he was loving so much. He wishes his mom loved him as much as he loves her. I'm sure she does even more. But one of the things that I think, she's a busy business owner. Like, her life is very, very busy. She makes time for this. I'm so thankful, because as a church, our heart is to connect you with your God-given purpose and then give you opportunities to live your purpose out. I believe what Esther is going to do today is part of God's purpose for her life. He's called her to preach. He's gifted her to preach. I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say and what God has to say through her. More importantly, so let's make Esther feel welcome as she comes. Prepare to hear what the Lord would say to you through her. Thanks, Esther.
Wow. Thank you. What a welcome. Yes, my name is Esther Lisakovsky, and I have the privilege of being able to serve here at Celebration along with my husband, Max, and our 2 sons. And you might wonder what actually qualifies me to be up here this morning preaching to you. As Lance said, one of them, his name is George, and he was on that video. He is 5, and George, I love you more than you know. Oh, he's so sweet. My other son is Henry. He's 3, and I think that often you guys at church, you see us just like this. We're well dressed, our hair is combed nicely, we have these big smiles on our face, and our kids are sweet and obedient and loving. I wanted to give you a little glimpse into what life is really like in the Lisakovsky household. Maybe you've seen a couple of those memes on Facebook. It has about 6 photos, and it's like what I think I do for a living, and what my kids think I do, and what my parents think I do, and this is what I actually do. So I wanted to kind of, in the holding to that, show you a picture here. This is our family taken on Easter. This is how you guys see my boys. This is how we are at church. And they are little cherubs. They're adorable and sweet and well-mannered and polite. Well, this is how my boys see themselves. They are little superheroes. We are in the height of superheroes in our family. We have a 3- and 5-year-old boy, and they love them, and they are superheroes, let me tell you, especially after that video. And then, okay, so this is how my boys really are. They're just little goofballs, and they're so sweet, and we have a lot of fun in our house. We have a lot of goofy moments. The truth is, there's a 4th photo that should be up here, but it's not. And if I could show you a 4th photo, it would show all the tantrums and the whining and the complaining and the day-to-day mom stuff that we deal with. The reason why it's not up there is because when those moments happen in our household, I delete them off my phone as soon as they happen, so there's no evidence that is taking place in our house. So you can see them as they are here. Now, there is a woman who has come to be the woman who most preachers want to preach on Mother's Day, because she is the epitome of the perfect mother and the perfect wife. And maybe you've heard of her. She's the Proverbs 31 woman. And this woman has been making us feel guilty for 3,000 years. This woman, she gets up before dawn and she gathers her food from afar. She considers a field and she buys it. She takes care of the poor and the needy, and her children and her husband rise up and call her blessed. Now, moms, when was the last time your husband and children rose and called you blessed? Can you remember a moment? Maybe they do. But the truth is that this woman is incredible. She's a wonderful woman to exemplify. I put this picture here because this is the mental image that I have of this woman, is that she's like a, June Cleaver type. She's got you can't see them, but I'm sure she's wearing pearls, and she's got her pretty dress on, and she's mopping the floor. And sometimes we have these mental images of what this woman would look like. But honestly, no wonder moms often leave church feeling down on Mother's Day. We can't live up to that standard of perfection. She is a worthy goal to attain to, but we are all in the process here, and none of us is perfect. And that's why I want to show you a little glimpse of our family as well. No one is perfect, but moms, you are doing an incredible job with your kids. Thank you. As I was preparing for this message today, I was really asking God to show me what his words would be to you today. The thing is that Mother's Day can be a really difficult day for a lot of women. And I was trying to think, what would Jesus say to you if he was up here instead of me preaching to you this morning? And I believe that, rather than just sing sweet songs about mothers or write poems about mothers or give you sweet platitudes about how great mothers are, I actually feel like Jesus would do what he did in Scripture. And I feel like Jesus would actually leave the 90 and the 9, and he would go after that one woman in this room, that one person here who's hurting and broken and just doesn't know what to expect from this Mother's Day. You walk in here and you're heartbroken. Maybe you've just had a miscarriage and you're still holding on to the love of that child in your heart and you'll never let that go. Maybe it's the woman who years ago, she had an abortion and she holds on to the pain and the guilt of that for years. Maybe it's the mother out there who's loved a child so much that she actually placed that child in someone else's care to take care of. She still wonders to this day what that child looks like and where they live and how they are. It could be the mother with children with special needs, and they love those children so much, but the truth is that that child is going to need their care 24/7, probably for the rest of their life, and that mom is here not sure how she can actually get through day after day because there's only so much of her. Maybe it's just every other mother out there who is worn down and tired, who has a little bit of stress on their shoulder, a little bit of anxiety, worry, fear, wondering if you're good enough, wondering if you're a good enough mom taking care of these precious children. So I hope that this message will actually reach out and meet you at the very point of your need today, whatever that is, wherever you are right now. I pray that this message will encourage you and bless you. And I know we've started off on a little bit of a heavy note. It's not going to stay there, I promise. We will laugh, we will cry. I've already done all of that this morning. So I wanted to speak to you about another woman that we read about in Scripture. But before I reach her, let's just talk about another lady. I have a bit of trivia for you this morning. Does anyone remember the leading lady of Scripture that I spoke about 1 year ago on Mother's Day last year? And my husband's not allowed to answer, but does anyone remember the name of the woman I spoke on last year? That's okay, I forgive you. It was Ruth. Yes, Ruth was a lowly Moabite woman, and Moabites were outside of the tribe of Israel. They weren't part of the chosen people, so there was a little bit of a stigma attached to them. But God took her from this place where she probably figured out where her life was headed. Her life was going in one direction, and God, in the middle of that, took her and placed her in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Through her obedience, through her sacrifice, and her humility towards God, God took her and placed her in a place of promise. So that was Ruth. But I wanted to speak, there's another woman in that scripture, in the book of Ruth, who's not often talked about, and that is because she is known for having a little bit of a bitter attitude. Does anyone know her name? You can shout it out if you know it. Thank you. Good job, guys. Naomi was her name, and she has a little bit of a stigma attached, but the reason why I want to focus on her, actually, I feel like God gave me this when I was opening my scripture to you. Just that Naomi actually has a story that we can all identify with in some level, and that's why I wanted to focus on her today. See, Naomi, I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick glimpse because we don't have a ton of time to go into it, but I've got it up here for you so that it's very small. I'll tell you everything. Naomi was a godly woman, a Jewish woman, married to a godly Jewish man, Elimelech. And they have 2 sons, and they're from Bethlehem, which is in Judah, which is inside the 12 tribes of Israel, the promised people. They're of a solid Christian, Jewish lineage. So what happens is in Bethlehem, they experience this severe famine. And so they are forced out of Bethlehem, and they go into a place called Moab, which I've just explained about Ruth. Moab was outside of the place of Israel, outside of the promised land, we'll call it, where the 12 tribes rested. So Moab was outside of that place, but they go there seeking refuge. So essentially this family of 4, they're refugees in a new land. They're displaced. Shortly after going to Moab, her husband, Elimelech, dies, and that leaves her as a widow with 2 sons in a new place. So these 2 boys I don't know how old they are. I'm going to say they're boys. They're probably young men, because eventually they do take 2 wives, Orpah and Ruth. And these 2 men, it doesn't say this in the book of Ruth, but I'm going to go so far as to say that if their father had been alive, I don't know that he would have loved that his sons took wives of the Moabites. But that's my assumption. I could be wrong there. They live in Bethlehem only for 10 years when both sons die. And actually, in 10 years, they don't have any children with their wives, Ruth and Orpah, which I also find interesting. So they're there for 10 years. The sons are now gone. That leaves Naomi with 2 daughters-in-law, with no husband, and her 2 sons. She went to that place a full family. And to be honest, I have a husband and I have 2 sons. And the idea of losing them would break my heart. She lost everything. At this point in her life, she feels like God has forsaken her, that God has left her abandoned. She feels bitterness start to take root in her life. I say this because I feel like this is a story that some of us can relate to. That place of losing people that we love, that loss can lead to bitterness. What happened was, to finish the story quickly, Naomi decides that, there's nothing left for her in Moab. And she hears that now the famine is over. She's going to move back to Bethlehem. She's going to go back to that homeland because there's nothing for her here. And her 2 daughters-in-law come along with her at first. And then she stops. She looks at them. She's like, you know what? You should stay behind. You don't need to come with me. I'm old. I don't have anything to offer you. And they're like, no, Mom, we're going to come with you. We want to stay with you. She's like, listen, I love you, but I don't have any sons for you. The chances of you getting married if we move back to Bethlehem are very slim. So you may as well stay here where you have friends and family and support. And so one of them, Orpah, she does choose to stay, and you can't really blame the woman. I mean, that's everything she knows is in Moab. But Ruth clings to Naomi, her mother-in-law. And she says, wherever you go, I'm going to go. And wherever you live, I'm going to live. And your God is going to be my God, and your people are going to be my people. You know what I think of when I think of that? We often think of Ruth and the sacrifice she made, but think about it from Naomi's perspective. How amazing would this mother-in-law have to be that her daughter-in-law would want to give up everything that she knows to travel with her? She wants to leave behind her people, she wants to leave behind her God, and she wants to follow the God of Naomi. To me, that shows that she was a woman of strong character, that she was an incredible influence in her daughter-in-law's life. So I wanted to focus on that. Now, the story of Naomi, I think it's a story that is of loss and grief and even bitterness. I feel like a number of us can probably relate to that. To get personal for a second, my husband and I, we've both lost our fathers. We've both lost all of our grandparents. We've lost people in our life. We understand what pain is like. I wanted to share this story as well of my own mom, and the story that I feel like her story is very entwined in the story of Naomi. And so I'm going to be sharing about her. I actually wanted to take a second. I just wanted to dedicate this message to my mom. I don't talk about her often, but she has been an incredible influence in my life. And she's the reason why I'm up here, in spite of everything that she's gone through. And I'm going to share her story a little bit in this too, so you can understand where we're coming from. But my mom left an incredible legacy of faith. She had 4 children. One of them was stillborn at birth, didn't make it at birth. And a couple years later, my dad passed away of cancer very suddenly and left my mom with 3 children that were 5 and under. And my parents were in full-time ministry. So they were missionaries in South America. They had a home church. They were doing great things for God. 6 years into the marriage, my dad passes away. And you can imagine where my mom was left, feeling like Naomi, very much like that. Like, God, we were doing great things for you. So why this loss? Why this upset in my life and my destiny? Feeling like maybe God has forgotten her, forsaken her. But the thing is, she didn't hold on to that. She didn't. She pressed on. And one of my mom's favorite chapters in the Bible is Romans 8, and she quoted it all the time to us growing up as kids. And I wanted to read this to you. Romans 8:28, she read this to us a lot. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. My mother pressed on. Naomi pressed on, looking for what God had for her. They don't hold back. They don't hold on to that place of bitterness. What happens is that, to finish the story of Naomi for a second, Naomi chose to press on. She chose to move back to Bethlehem with her daughter Ruth. She introduces Ruth to a godly man named Boaz, who just happens to be the one man, there was two men in Bethlehem who could actually redeem Ruth from her situation. One of them chose to not take that commitment on. He didn't need a wife. He didn't need the lands that she would provide. But this other man, Boaz, he actually chose to marry this woman. I don't feel like it was a coincidence at all that God's hand was at work. I find it ironic that Ruth married another man, did not have any children by him. He's taken from her, and then she ends up going back to a place which, ironically, Naomi said, you shouldn't come back to Bethlehem with me. There's nothing for you. And you know what there was in Bethlehem? Her husband. Isn't that incredible and ironic to anyone else? Not just a husband, but she ends up being the great-grandmother of King David and one day being in the lineage of Jesus Christ. God actually took both of these women out of a place of despair and raised them up to a place of prosperity, of provision, so that Ruth could take care of Naomi as Naomi got older, as a widow, that God provided for them even though they couldn't see God's hand in that moment. I feel that God can use us as well. In our moments of need and desperation, God can take you from that place of bitterness and despair, and he can change your destiny. He can change what you feel is your call. He can change the place where you're destitute, you're lost, you're bitter, you're hurt. God can use you to bring your family and your friends to Christ as well. He can take the despair that you feel in those moments, and he can use that as a place to raise you up, to bring others to the place of the kingdom of God. I believe that is his purpose for all of us. There was a time when Naomi actually didn't see the hand of God working in her life. All she saw was the bitterness and the despair and the heartbreak of losing those that she loved. She couldn't see her destiny was unfolding right before her very eyes. But God took her beyond her heartbreak, beyond her bitterness, and God blessed her, and through her, God blessed many. He blessed each one of us through her because she pressed on. And I feel like if we could sum up this story in a sentence, I believe it would be this: one thing I do, forgetting what is behind, I press on toward the goal. Amen? Do you remember who said those words? Who said these words here in Philippians 3? Who wrote them? Paul. And you know where Paul was when he wrote these words? He was in prison. Paul was in prison for his faith when he wrote these words, that I press on toward the goal. In the moment of Paul's despair, he decides to write a letter to the church of Philippi, who was in great need, who was suffering, who was being persecuted. And in his own moment of persecution and despair, he actually rose up and wrote a word to encourage others. He didn't stay in his place of despair. He didn't stay bitter. He pressed on. He pressed on so he could encourage others in their place of need. And so I want to encourage you that we come to a place in our life where even the valleys in our life are simply a place that will make us stronger. And not just us, those that are around us will be made stronger because of those valleys in our life. That when you look back at your life and you see the sorrow, you see the loss, you see the bitterness and the despair, you press on because you know that God has a purpose and an intent for your life that goes way beyond your own situation, and that God can use you to bring hope and restoration to someone else. He can actually use you to bring others to faith in Jesus Christ. Amen. I'm going to read to you what Paul said to the church here. But before that, I want you to think on this as we're going through this, as we're reading these verses. I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to take a moment to ponder a time in your life when you've gone through something similar to what Naomi has gone through, something similar to what my mom has gone through. Maybe you've had a loss. Maybe you've had a failed marriage, or you've had a lost job. Maybe you've had an abortion in your past or a miscarriage. You're going through some tough stuff. But I want you to think on those tough times, and forgive me because I know that loss is a hard thing, and I've lost people that I love too, and I would never say that you need to forget those people in your life that you've lost. Never would I say that to you. But I would say, let's think on those times. How have these moments in your life made you stronger? And how has God carried you through those moments of hurt and pain? And maybe you're in the middle of it right now and you actually can't see God at work at all. And you're a little lost right now. You're a little frustrated. You're actually bitter. You're hurt. You're in pain. You're grieving. And you can't see what God is doing in that situation right now. I want to encourage you that if you are still waiting for the victory and waiting for the redeeming moment that God has to bring you out of that place, out of that valley, if you're waiting for God to show you his divine purpose for your suffering, I want you to think on this. Because this is what Paul's attitude was when he was writing from his prison cell. He says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow to attain to the resurrection of the dead. Not that I have already obtained all this or have already been made perfect, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but this one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. I want to give you a couple points today for those that are in the middle of that valley and they don't know what tomorrow holds. They don't know if they can get past this hurt and pain and bitterness. I want to give you a word of hope. How do we receive the victory in difficult circumstances? Because we can't stay in that valley. We can't stay in that hardship. We need to press on. So how do we do that? Number one, we let go of what is behind. And number two, we press on toward the goal. That may sound really easy, but I know it's not. Number one, how do we let go? What is holding us back from victory? As I said, it could be a sin, it could be a regret in your past, it could be loss, pain, it could be a bad debt, a failed marriage, a failed job. It could be bitterness. Well, let me tell you, if anyone had stuff weighing them down in their past, it was Paul. Because this very man who was in prison for his faith and encouraging others who were being persecuted, you know what? He was a murderer of Christians before that. He murdered other Christians who he was now willing to give his life for. But imagine the weight of a man like that in prison, knowing that in his past, he had killed those he was now trying to protect and love and serve. If anyone had stuff weighing them down in their past, it was Naomi. Naomi, who was a refugee in a new land and then loses her husband, loses her sons. If anyone had reason to be bitter and hurt, it was her. Or my mother, who lost her son, who lost her husband, who lost part of her calling in serving God in ministry. If anyone had reason to resent God or be bitter towards God, it was them. But God welcomes our honesty. He welcomes our brokenness, our prayers of desperation. God has also made a way through his Son, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the bridge between our suffering and his glory. Jesus Christ is the reason that I can stand here through my loss, that my mom could stand up and raise 3 children to love God because of what he poured into her in those moments of desperation. How do we receive victory in difficult circumstances? We let go of what is behind us and we press on toward the goal. But what is the goal? What are we even attaining to? What is the hope that we have? Really? Because right now, at this point, it all seems pretty down in the valley. It's a really hard message to preach, to be honest, because it's not very much of a Mother's Day message, I'm going to be honest. But actually, mothers, we understand suffering more than most, don't we? We understand what it is to lose people we love. We understand what it is for our children to turn their backs on us or on the faith, to be hurt. We understand something about suffering. But you know what? We have a promise and we have a hope in Jesus Christ. And as Paul writes in Philippians 3, what is the goal? The goal is to know him, that's Christ, and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings. Number 1, the main point, the goal is to know him, to know Christ, to be intimate, to have that fellowship with God, to see him face to face. And you know what? That leads me into point number 2. What is the goal? The goal is to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. The goal and the prize is heaven. And you know why? Because in heaven, we get to see Jesus face to face. It is there we will see him and know him more intimately than we have ever known him before. And that is the hope that we cling to in the midst of the valley of the shadow of death, that we know that one day we will see Christ face to face. And as it says in Revelation 7:17, for the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And when we see Christ face to face, he will wipe away every tear. He will take every pain that we have, every bitterness, every sadness from our heart. He will wipe away the tears. As Oswald Chambers says, he says, the Christian life is gloriously difficult, but its difficulty does not make us faint. It does not make us cave in. It stirs us up to overcome. Amen? Amen. God will stir you up in those moments of your greatest need. He is the one who will help you to rise up in your moment of desperation. He is the one, through his word and through his spirit, he empowers us to be able to rise above our circumstances. And this morning you will see that we have mountains everywhere. Now I'm a graphic designer in my other life, in my other time. I am a graphic designer with my husband. And I was trying to come up with a word to encourage those that follow me on Instagram as a word. This word persevere had come to me a couple months ago. And I wanted to really encourage people who were in the depths of the shadow of death, we'll call it, the valley. And I wanted to find a word that would encourage them. So the word that came to me was persevere. But what could I use to illustrate that word persevere? How could I describe that to them? Immediately got this picture of a mountain top. Because the truth is, when you're down here in the valley and things are really tough and you've experienced pain and grief and loss, when you're down here in the valley, you can't see to the top of the mountain. You can see it here because it's only so high. But generally, the mountaintop is covered by clouds. You can't see it. You're looking up in despair, thinking, this life is too hard. As a mother, you look up, you start to climb, you're like, this is tough. I am so tired. I am not the mother I thought I was gonna be. I'm yelling and screaming at my kids, and I thought I'd be the epitome of perfection to them and love and long-suffering and patience, but I am none of those things. I am a failure. And you're looking up at that mountain and through your valley, you're like, I can't even see the hope on the other end. I am so tired. Or maybe like me, you've started a new business, and it is hard. It is a lot of hard work. Or you're just starting school and getting a degree and the studying, and you're tired and weary, and you don't want to take another step. Those that are hurting today, you don't want to take another step. You're done. You're like, I am done being strong for everyone. You're in this place of this valley. But I want to encourage you that if you can just get past the fatigue, the hurt, the bitterness, just long enough to take one step up that mountain, it'll start to become a lot more clear what God is doing in your life. You take one step, you take 2 steps, you continue to persevere, you continue to work past. When you're halfway up the mountain, you know what? When you're halfway up the mountain, you can look down at the desolation. You can say, okay, it'd be a lot easier to just turn back right now. Things are really hard. I don't want to go up the mountain. I don't want to persevere. That's for good Christians. I don't want to be a good Christian anymore. I'm just tired. Let me just go down the mountain. But the thing is, if you're halfway up the mountain, you may as well go up to the top, so that the feeling that you get when you get to the top is going to be one of victory and not of defeat. There is no victory at the bottom of the mountain. You've got to get up to the top. Because if you will persevere past all the tough stuff, and you will get to the top of the mountain, when you persevere day in and day out, when every single day becomes a climb up that mountain, your life will become a journey from one mountaintop to the next mountaintop to the next mountaintop. And where even the valleys that are in your life, even those tough times of your life, are simply a place that will make you stronger. Amen? If you will persevere, your life will become a place of victory and not defeat. That is my hope for you today. That is my encouragement to you today who are going through tough times, is to persevere. As Beth Moore says, she says, grace is the divine means by which God makes himself everything we need to utterly abound. God has made himself everything we need to abound. He says in 1 Peter 5:10, he says, in his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus, so that after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, he will support and strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation. Amen? You know what God promises you here? He promises you restoration. He promises you support. He promises you strength and a firm foundation. When you're up on that top mountain, you have Christ as your foundation. He is all that we need to utterly abound through his grace, because his grace provided that bridge from suffering to glory. As it says in Romans 5:3-4, it says, we also glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance. We wouldn't be able to persevere without some suffering. It toughens us up. And through our perseverance, we develop character and character hope. And hope does not disappoint, right? Hope does not disappoint. One day we will see Jesus Christ face to face. That is our hope. That is our surety. That's what we stand on when we're climbing up the mountain and we're not sure how we're going to get up there. That is our surety. That if we can let go of what's behind, we will receive victory. How do we receive victory in difficult circumstances? What do we need to do? We need to let go of what is behind us. Not to forget. We don't need to forget those that we love that we've lost. That is not what I would ever ask you to do. But we let go long enough to be able to take another step up that mountain of our struggles of our life. And we press on toward the goal. Don't look back. Don't look back, because you are not going that way. You are moving forward. We are all moving forward in God. Even if it doesn't feel like you are today, you are going forward. Our calling is ahead of us. Our destiny is ahead of us. Our life is ahead of us. It is not behind us. I want to encourage you that are in valleys right now to try to look and see the goodness of God in that situation, because Ruth, she couldn't see the goodness of God in her life. She followed Naomi to a new land seeking hope. Naomi could not see the goodness of God when she lost her husband and her sons. She couldn't see the goodness of God, but he was there all along, holding her up, supporting her. As it says in Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not our own strength, it's not our own power or might that gets us up that mountain. As much as we might try and think that we can do it on our own, we can't. So let go of yourself and hold on to God in those moments of desperation. And remember that your faithfulness is the key to someone else's faith. You know what? Naomi was the key to Ruth's faith. Her faithfulness in God is what led Ruth to the foot of Christ. Paul, his faithfulness in the midst of persecution in that jail cell was the reason why so many Christians came to faith in Christ, because he persevered. His faithfulness was the key to other people growing in God. And my mother's faithfulness in the midst of her pain and suffering was what brought me to the cross of Christ. I saw God's faithfulness in the midst of the pain. I saw that God could do all things through Christ. And she reminded us that daily, that God was our Father. Through the midst of our suffering, God was my Father. And I got to know God in a way that many others may not understand, because I didn't have a father on earth. He was it. And because of the suffering that I went through as a daughter without a father, I pressed into God. I took a step forward and I accepted him as my Father, as my everything. And he is the reason why I am here today. And my mother's faithfulness is the reason I am here today. And I want to challenge all of you here today to think on this. How is your faithfulness the key to someone else's faith? How is you persevering through the tough stuff? How is you taking a step forward and pressing on going to change someone else's life? I want you to fill in the blank here. We're going to put this up here. I want you to fill in the blank. And if you can't think of it now, I want you to go home today and think on this for the week. My faithfulness is the key to this person's faith. I want you to fill in the blank with a child, a spouse, a parent, a coworker, a friend, someone in your life who you know that if you are faithful through this tough journey that you are on, mothers, if you are going through the tough stuff, how can you be an encouragement to your children or to your spouse? How is your faithfulness going to lead them to the cross of Christ? Mothers, you have been uniquely designed for the children that you have. They are not an accident. You being their mother is not an accident. You are there for them on purpose. Mothers who are fostering and adopting your children, you are the perfect mother for that child. God has connected you and brought you together for a purpose. Mothers of children with special needs, you are an incredible woman who God has placed in that child's life for a reason, because you are the one person who can lead them to faith in Christ. You're the one person who can give them hope to point them to the cross of Christ one day and show them that through their suffering, through their difficulty, that God is for them and not against them. I want to give a quick note to the husbands and the men in this room. I want to encourage you with this, that men, you are in your wife's life for a reason. That woman, you've been called to support her and strengthen her. In her moments of weakness, she needs you to remind her of the destiny that God has for her, that God has a purpose for her. But men, we need you to rise up and accept that calling to pray. We need you to accept that calling to support and to protect those that are in your life. Whether you're a husband, a brother, a father, men, you have a role to play that is so vital and so important in this world. And I hope you never shove it off as meaningless, because you are here on purpose. You are in that family to strengthen them, to encourage them, to support them in their weakness. Because women, we can pull it all together. We can pretend really well like we have it all together. We can pretend like we're strong enough, but we are weak, and we need you. We need you to remind us of the promises of God daily. We need you to pray with us and support us in that. There's another quote that's just for you, men. It's by Oswald Chambers. It's not great men who change the world. It is weak men in the hands of a great God. You do not need to be physically strong. You do not need to have it all together. You just need to know who is your God. Who is your God? And how can you help the women in your life? How can you support the women in your life in their calling and in their destiny? Because guaranteed, as you come alongside and support those women, you're fulfilling your destiny as well as men of God. I want to remind you this morning, one more time, to let go of what is behind you, to press on toward the goal. There's a word that Paul wrote at the very end of his life. It's found in Hebrews. Hebrews 12:1-3 says, "Throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross." We throw off our past. As Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7, at the very end of his life, the last letter he writes to his son in the faith, Timothy, he says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." That is your journey as we are in this race. You fight the good fight. You finish and you keep the faith. We press on and we let go of what is behind us and we press on towards the goal, because in his presence, there is victory for you. Amen.